you all very much for sort of being so intently wrapped up by everything that is here. There are few themes in my 27 years of journalism which have excited me more than Chandrayaan. It's not just Chandrayaan 3, but the entire Indian Space Research Organization program. But what India has achieved through Chandrayaan 3 is actually a jump. It's a jump from a technology standpoint. It's a jump in terms of our own ambitions. It gives us a look at where we are headed. But it is the hard work of women and men, engineers, scientists, researchers, guided by a certain vision, which has actually come of age. And it's actually a stepping stone for what the future of space and India is all about. The Minister Jitendra Singh is the best person in this country, perhaps, to speak about India's space ambitions. Thank you so much for being with us. Off the top, I must ask you, and don't deny it because I think I know the answer to the question. I was very nervous just before Vikram went down and touched the surface. How nervous were you?
No, certainly. So I think those of us who have been more closely associated, both the ISRO team and I being associated with them, had a certain more nervous, number of nervous moments, certain more vulnerable moments because we were following a timeline. So we knew, like a pilot who knows that he's to take a turn or he's to compromise clouds. So we knew that somewhere, I think my first nervous moment was when the Chandrayaan had to leave the Earth's orbit and then, get into the moon's orbit because that is like changing track of a motor car you're driving. So suddenly you're asked to move from this track to the other track and without causing any mishap on the way. So that happened in the middle of one night. And now, of course, in the last few minutes, particularly when we are very conscious that when it reaches about 300 kilometers, the speed suddenly goes down from 6,000 kilometers per hour downwards because two of the engines also shut off. And since most of the viewers are simply enjoying the fantasy of it, they are not aware of it, luckily so, good for them. But those of us, they know, because after about 150 meters or so, we lose all contact. So then it's left to the wisdom and discretion of Vikram. It's just like how well you have trained the child or the boy to be there. Because then it is up to him to decide, because he has the sensors, he has the camera. So just as the pilot announces crew, prepare landing, something like that. Here it is go, no go.
Right.
And the pilot can take rounds in the sky as you sometimes experience. Here it doesn't happen because you have the anneal algorithm and he visualizes in a radius of about 4 kilometers or so, and if in the given span of time it's not able to actually make up its mind,
right,
and the time is over, then we don't risk it and it is deferred to the next day. Yeah. So these are very crucial moments because you don't know what is happening there and what assessment, evaluation or inferences are going to be drawn by the Vikram. So that's also a test of how well has he been trained for that task. It's just like sending a soldier on the front and then you don't know. Then it is left to him to face the challenge on the spot at the spur of moment. But luckily here, it was so smooth that it didn't have even to compromise. It just went down, in fact, touched the surface of moon a few minutes or seconds earlier than expected.
Yeah. The Prime Minister has an affinity to science. We've been talking about this over the last couple of days, particularly space and ISRO. It's something that interests him a great deal. He's spoken about it in the past as well. He's followed it even when he was Chief Minister.
Absolutely.
So he was in BRICS and he was doing all of that, but simultaneously his mind was obviously in Bengaluru.
Absolutely. And to pick up from what you were saying in your introductory remarks, Vishnu, it's been a quantum jump.
Yeah.
And many of us may not realize the quantum jump has happened because of Prime Minister Modi having thrown open the space sector, which is sometimes described as unlocking of the space sector,
yeah,
has been popularly described in the media. So till about 4 years back, the gates of Sriharikota were forbidden. This time when this launching happened on the 14th of July, we had as many as more than 1,000 media persons inside. Yeah. We had school and college boys and girls. We had people from public life. We had even ministers, right, from Punjab up to Kerala. So there was a huge amount of enthusiasm, as a result of which I think this mission has been owned up. The kind of enthusiasm you were referring to is because everybody owns up this mission. Earlier on, we were functioning behind a wheel of secrecy. So nobody knew what was happening. Even if there was a launching, it would appear in the form of a small news in a remote corner of a newspaper. People would not be able to figure out where actually is the Sriharikota on this planet. So this is because Prime Minister Modi has broken these taboos of past, and I know sometimes I wonder why it couldn't have happened earlier. At the same time, even at the physical level, it has increased funding. It has enthused the private sector. It has enthused the industry. Within just 3-4 years, we have more than 150 startups, private startups, which the Prime Minister was referring in his address this morning as well. We had just 3 or 4 of them because they didn't find anything attractive over there. And now some of these startups, like Skyroot and others who have come in the recent months, are now also turning into entrepreneurs, making fortune out of it. So it's become a new avenue of livelihood as well, in addition to generating space economy. So actually it is indeed a quantum jump, which has happened in the last 4-5 years, both in terms of resources, also in the terms of the belonging of the mission, which has become pan-India.
Let me ask you some direct questions. This is done. There may be more Chandrayaan missions in the future, but Gaganyaan is the next big ambition for India. There will be astronauts. Will we have eventually, or perhaps even in the start, a woman astronaut?
See, to begin with, just to give you the sequence of events, Gaganyaan unfortunately got delayed. We had a very ambitious plan to see it happening somewhere around the 75th year of India's independence, 22-23. But then suddenly COVID came in, and in fact when the lockdown happened, some of our potential astronauts were undergoing a stint of training at the Gregory Institute in Moscow. They had to be called back. So the whole thing got delayed. So now we are planning the first trial mission, which will possibly happen around first or second week of October. We thought we could do it in September, but now September we'll have Aditya, and then October first week. So which will sort of mimic the eternal. It'll go up for a few hours, come back. Because sending up a human being is as important as getting him or her safe back. So that's equally important. Otherwise, it'll be a huge setback by all means. So how to get the human being back, which are the spots identified? We've already identified 2 or 3 locations in the water. Then it'll be a collective effort. The Navy functionaries would be there, the Coastal Guard. So that will mimic that eternally. In the second trial, we'll have not a soulful human being, but a human being in the form of a robo, and that will be a female robo.
Right. So that answers my question. Also, in the future,
and she's been named. She's been named as Vyommitra.
Okay.
So Vyommitra will be the female, not a human female, but a robo female who would be accompanying. That might happen in the beginning of next year. So she will mimic all the activities. She'll perform all those activities which will be expected to be performed by the astronauts when they actually go up in the first ever indigenous human flight, because one human being had already flown in the form of Rakesh Sharma, but that was Soviet. So she will do all the activity, perform all the functions, then come back and mimic landing, and then getting her back, receiving her back safely would also happen in the manner in which it is expected to happen. And once everything goes off to our satisfaction, then of course it will be the human being. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be male, it could be female. That's yet to be taken a call.
Next question: will there be an Indian space station?
I think this is we just move from one level to other, so we cannot be denying that, but we may not be able to fix a time schedule for that, because sometimes our missions get delayed on account of imponderables, like happened in the form of pandemic. Sometimes because of the planetary positions, because the dates are fixed in the heavens.
Yes.
Like Prime Minister today said that he was missing all the time, but it couldn't be held because the date had been fixed, and so also the BRICS date. Otherwise he would have liked to be there himself physically. So all these dates also sometimes keep changing. Now, for example, if God forbid it had not happened on the 23rd as we had scheduled, then next possible date would have been 27th. So the positioning of the plan is the day and night cycle, all those things. So we have Gaganyaan, we have Aditya, we have possibly follow-up with the Mangalyaan, and then finally space station. But what is heartening is now that you would have realized during Prime Minister Modi's DC visit, Washington DC visit, all the agreements were technology heavy. And one of them was Americans soliciting Indian astronauts to accompany them to the International Space Station, which has about 20-25 countries, being a part of it. So now those who started the journey much, much earlier than us, particularly the USA and the then Soviet Union, are now actually looking up to us not as equal partners, but also looking up to us for vital cues, particularly after the Chandrayaan success, the Chandrayaan-1 getting the evidence of water molecules. And there's not much of expectation from Chandrayaan-3,
Yeah.
because the inputs obtained will be virgin even for the other nations,
Sure.
because they wouldn't have had this experience.
I'll talk about that in just a moment, but when do we expect an Indian astronaut on board the International Space Station? Do we have a rough idea when?
I think it will be in near future, because that's what has been...
Next couple of months or
it
within
could be
the next
so.
year?
It could be so.
so.
The dates have not been fixed, but the US offer is of a nature, very
Sure.
inviting nature. They wish us to be there.
You said something interesting. You said that the robot would be called Vyommitra. So does that mean that our astronauts will be called Vyomnauts?
Let's wait and see. But we have a huge women participation in our space missions. I must confess that. And they're all first generation women. It's not by there you can't have the dynasty.
No.
Because it's purely merit. And hats off to them. Most of our missions, including the Gaganyaan mission, has a huge women scientist presence.
There's another wonderful aspect of ISRO, where ISRO's leaders are deeply spiritual people, and they're scientists of the highest order. And it is seamless. For them, science and spirituality, and that sort of, the spirituality gives them motivation at one level, and the science is what guides them in their minds. And that's a culture, I think, of ISRO.
No, absolutely. Again, I think I can't help giving credit to Prime Minister Modi. Till a few years ago, Sriharikota was banned for outsiders, by and large. So I always used to wonder why it's so. So when it was put across Prime Minister, he was so supportive. And now we are also conducting tours of students, college and school boys, girls, to actually have a feel of what it's all about. Because you would realize, as I agree with you, Vishnu, the entire work culture is slightly different. I think it's a kind of role model for the rest to follow. That they never superannuate.
Right.
So they give all their life to the mission. So you would see, even in any of the missions, you see all these retired scientists also there, all the retired chairmen also there. They get involved in the mission right from the beginning. They continue to contribute. They might have superannuated officially, but they continue to remain a part of the team in formal or informal capacity. So that is a very healthy culture. They have dedicated their life to the mission. Their caliber is of the highest order. I've always been saying that we have cost-effective missions because we make up for the cost through our human cerebral, resources. We had someone like Sarabhai who could carry the launcher on the carriage of his bicycle, and still hope of reaching where Soviet Union and USA were already hoping to reach. So that way, and secondly, after every launch, they pay an obeisance at Tirupati, as you rightly said. And immediately after the launch, you know how the celebration is by distributing a laddu, the Tirupati laddu to each one of them. So I think it's the ideal blend of India's traditional heritage and the most updated modern Indian technology, for which our scientists are known. In fact, our space scientists have been acknowledged as among the best in the world, and that is evident from the fact that our graduates and postgraduates from our Trivandrum Institute are actually spread all over the world. Even the NASA is being manned by them.
In fact, that was my next question. A lot of the engineers at ISRO are from regional engineering colleges. They are not necessarily from the most advanced colleges in the world. And so it is a celebration of what an Indian education and engineering and science can actually achieve.
Absolutely. As I said, because I have been a part of the fraternity all my life, scientific. I think I personally feel our Trivandrum Institute is among the best in the world. And I think the best evidence of that is that they have 100% placement, and most of them are absorbed in premier institutes of the world like NASA. So with the space having got unlocked in the last 4-5 years and new avenues having opened up, I think that will be the other implication of it, that brain drain happening would also stop, because we have a lot of avenues now, both in space economy, in space entrepreneurship, in space startups.
Frugal engineering has been at the heart of what ISRO does. But what if I was to ask you this, that frugal engineering has gotten us where we have, but in the future, if we are to have a space station, if we are to have a deep space mission, we need to be able to fund ISRO. And that means potentially billions of dollars or equivalent. Are we willing to spend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to explain that in 2 or 3 parts. A, that after this quantum jump, as you rightly mentioned, in the last 3-4 years, there has been increase in the pace of the economy generation. Even we are rendering our facility to the foreign satellites. We have launched more than 380 foreign satellites so far. We have earned more than about 250 million euros. And from America, we have earned more than $170 million or so. So that's one part of it, by lending out our launching site. Overall, the India's space economy today stands about 8 billion, which is just about 2% of the global percentage. But the entire world is recognizing the increased pace, and that's why the conservative projections are that 80 billion by 2040. But the other day, I think about 2-3 days back, we had that ALD report, other little report, which mentions that we could have the potential of 100 billion by 2040, which is going to be a huge, gigantic jump. And that's what the world is now expecting, because we have started moving very fast. Our launchings are also very frequent. And in addition to that, the funding is also happening because it's been opened up to the private participation. And third, the most recent decision, which is again a very historic decision, it didn't get so much of publicity because the other news came in, was the National Research Foundation, the Anusandhan, which is going to follow the same parameters as is followed in the rest of the world, because let's not forget that if we have to play a global role, our parameters have to be global, our challenges have to be global, our strategies have to be global. So we had a National Research Society in America, we had one in Germany, we had some country. I don't know why again we had to wait for Prime Minister Modi. So many things have happened after Prime Minister Modi came in, and particularly in the area of science and technology. So we have this National Research Foundation called Anusandhan, which was passed in the last session of Parliament. It will be heavily tilted towards non-government sources, in the sense that, for example, if we have a 50,000 crore budget for 5 years, as much as about 36,000 will be contributed from non-government sources. It could be from philanthropy, it could be from private sector, it could be from CSR, it could be from domestically, it could be from foreign investment, as is happening in the other countries. Sure. Because that's how the NASA has grown. Because they was not purely dependent on the government sources. Even today, much of the funding happens from the other source. So I think that's going to be a huge turnover.
So you're going to scale up your
absolutely, and I
ISRO.
think once we get going, the National Research Foundation that we have envisaged in the form of Anusandhan is going to be a more outcome-oriented and a better version of the National Research Society of America.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about America, in the sense that when the Prime Minister was there, he signed the landmark Artemis Accords. Now, I think this is also something that's worth discussing, the fact that India is interested in space in terms of peaceful collaboration, non-militarization of space, and peaceful exploration, collaboration and exploration. And so therefore, you've defined the vision of ISRO going forward. We are not in competition with China. We are in competition with ourselves for our technology, and we want to work with other nations.
No, absolutely. I think this is very much in keeping with the ethos that India has been following. In fact, our space program and our nuclear energy program began almost around the same time. And right from the beginning, the founding fathers, the two programs had made it very clear that this is going to be the peaceful purposes. Though sometimes I wonder, when Homi Baba said this in the context of atomic energy, how much he would have been trusted, because Hiroshima and Nagasaki had happened just about 7-8 years earlier, when the first atomic energy program was launched by Homi Baba. But he had the confidence to say that this is going to be for peaceful purposes, regardless of whether the world trusted him. But now we have actually vindicated ourselves. Both, even in our nuclear energy, is being used for other purposes, for medical treatments, for managing the shelf lives, etc., of vegetable, fruit, etc. And similarly, our space technology is also being used for, I think that is one distinguished feature of, in the context of India, unlike many other countries. We are not only confining ourselves to the launching of rockets, though that sounds very fantastic, and the imagery is very romantic, and it conjures up our imagination and enthuses the entire nation and the common citizen. But more than that, in fact, and that also happened after I think it was in 2016, it was at the behest of Prime Minister Modi, a marathon workshop was arranged, where all the space scientists were made to sit with the with the representatives of different sectors. The result of which is today we have space technology virtually in every Indian household and virtually in every Indian infrastructure. That is also again for the peaceful development purposes. Whether it's roads and buildings, whether it's smart cities, whether it's laying down of the railway tracks, whether it's manning the unmanned railway tracks, it's telemedicine, it is digital. Our Vyommitra program, that program for the mapping of the farms and lands, again purely dependent on space technology. So we have a new geospatial policy coupled with the drones. So the entire scenario has been given a different kind of outlook and to bring ease of living in the life of a common man. So absolutely, not only we are professing that, we are also living up to that, because space technology has become a means of peaceful, fast-track development in this country.
Navigation is something which
absolutely,
we depend on.
disaster management. I remember what Prime Minister said in the morning, very beautifully he put it.
Yeah.
Some people question the cost. The cost saved by avoiding the disasters is much more than the cost spent. It was 600 crore. And now we are also actually coming to the aid of the other countries. Yes. I think it was in 2015 or early 2016, we set up a satellite. Which is popularly called SARC satellite because it covers all the other countries, except Pakistan did not want to be a part of it. That is to their disadvantage. But all the other neighboring countries, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, they all are a part of that. So we are actually providing our satellite, providing them inputs about possible disaster events happening. So actually we are also now coming to the aid of the others. So absolutely these are all peaceful activities, peaceful purpose activities.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, and I think Minister Jitendra Singh, the best person to speak about the entire Indian space program. It's something that he personally deals with on a day-to-day basis. But what an inspiration ISRO is to all of us, and it's just so wonderful to talk about ISRO and celebrate India's moment in the moon. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Vishnu. I enjoyed it.